If you don't understand the petrodollar, you don't understand geopolitics. And right now, that system is standing on a pressure plate. One wrong move, and it shifts. Right now, oil tankers and other cargo ships are inching through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow artery carrying nearly a fifth of the world's oil. This is despite the tensions between Iran, the United States, and Israel that are rising with each passing day. But here's the part most people aren't seeing. If that choke point closes, even partially, it's not just oil that gets disrupted. The entire global financial order tied to the dollar starts to shake. Because this isn't just a war story, it's a money story. And it's unfolding in real time. Stick with this, because by the end, you'll see how a conflict thousands of miles away could quietly rewrite the rules of your paycheck, your savings, and your future. And if you want more breakdowns like this, where noise gets stripped away and only the signal remains, consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing or following us today. Not for headlines, but for clarity when it matters most. Here's the thing. The world didn't always run on dollars the way it does today. After the Bretton Woods Agreement, the US dollar became the backbone of global trade. At first, it was tied to gold. But when that link broke in the 1970s, something else had to replace that trust. Oil stepped in. The deal was simple, but powerful. Oil-producing nations would sell their oil in US dollars. In return, they received security guarantees and access to global markets. This created what we now call the petrodollar system. Every country that needed oil, which is basically every country, now needed dollars first. Think about that for a second. Before a nation can fuel its cars, power its industries, or keep its economy running, it has to get dollars. That demand created a constant global hunger for the US currency. It's what allowed the United States to borrow cheaply, spend heavily, and still remain at the center of the global financial universe. Now bring it closer to home. When your country imports fuel, it pays in dollars. When oil prices rise, more dollars are needed. That demand pushes up costs across the board. Transport gets expensive. Food prices follow. Electricity bills creep up. Businesses feel the pressure. And eventually, so do jobs. Inflation doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It travels. And oil is one of its fastest vehicles. This is why a disruption in the Strait of Hormuz isn't just a regional issue. It's a global shockwave waiting to happen. Now here's where things start to tilt. For decades, the petrodollar system worked almost like gravity. Invisible, constant, and unquestioned. But recently, cracks have started to show. Countries are beginning to ask a dangerous question. What if we don't need the dollar as much as we thought? And that's where BRICS comes in. This group of major emerging economies has been quietly exploring alternatives. Trading oil in local currencies. Building financial systems that don't rely on Western institutions. Even discussing the possibility of a shared currency backed by commodities. On its own, that might not seem like a big deal. But combine that with geopolitical tension, and suddenly it becomes something much bigger. Because conflict accelerates change. If the ongoing tensions escalate, and Iran moves to restrict or threaten access through the Strait of Hormuz, oil markets will panic. Prices will spike. But more importantly, trust in the current system will weaken. Countries will start looking for ways to protect themselves from that instability. And when nations start hedging against the dollar, even slightly, the effects compound. Less demand for dollars globally means less support for its value. That can lead to currency volatility. It can push inflation higher. It can make borrowing more expensive. And all of that eventually trickles down to ordinary people. You might be thinking, okay, but this still feels distant. Here's what most people don't realize. Global finance doesn't knock on your door. It seeps in through everyday life. It shows up when fuel prices jump overnight. When your grocery bill quietly increases, even though you're buying the same things. When companies start cutting costs, freezing hiring, or laying off workers to protect their margins. When your investments swing wildly, not because of something you did, but because the system itself is shifting. That's how this reaches you. Not as a headline, but as a slow squeeze. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Nobody really knows how this plays out. Not governments, not economists, not markets. Because we've never seen the petrodollar seriously challenged during a major geopolitical conflict like this. That uncertainty is what makes this moment so important. Now, let's flip the lens. Because while most people will feel the pressure, a small group will adapt early and position themselves differently. So what can you actually do? Tell us what your strategy may be in the comments, but here's my take. First, build income flexibility. Don't rely on a single paycheck as your only lifeline. That's the old model, the fragile model. Instead, start creating additional income streams, even small ones. Freelancing, digital skills, side businesses. It doesn't have to be massive. It just has to exist. Why does this work? Because economic shocks don't hit evenly. When one sector slows down, another might still be moving. Multiple streams mean you're not tied to a single point of failure. You become more like a network, less like a single wire. Second, rethink how you store and grow your money. If everything you own is tied to one currency or one type of asset, you're exposed. Diversification isn't just a buzzword here. It's protection. Consider spreading your assets across different classes, some that benefit from inflation, some that hold value during uncertainty. The logic is simple. When the system shifts, not everything moves in the same direction. Positioning yourself across different outcomes gives you balance when others feel volatility. Now you might be thinking, isn't this overreacting? Look, preparing isn't panic. It's awareness. You don't wait for the storm to hit before fixing the roof. And right now, the clouds are forming. Okay, folks, let's bring it all together. The petrodollar system turned the US dollar into the backbone of global trade. Oil demand reinforced that dominance for decades. But today, that system is facing pressure from two sides: geopolitical conflict on one end, and emerging economic alliances on the other. The Strait of Hormuz represents more than just a shipping route. It's a pressure point for the entire global economy. And any disruption there doesn't just affect oil. It challenges the global financial structure built around it. At the same time, BRICS is quietly building alternatives. Not overnight replacements, but gradual shifts. And in global finance, gradual shifts often lead to sudden outcomes. That's the part people miss. Change feels slow, until it isn't. So here's the question you need to sit with. If the rules of money are being rewritten, are you still operating under the old ones? Because the biggest risk isn't the change itself. It's being unaware of it while it happens. And here's the opportunity. Moments like this don't just create uncertainty. They create openings. For those who see early, think differently, and act before the crowd catches on. So, where do you stand? Are you watching this unfold as a distant story, or recognizing it as something that could reshape your financial reality? If this opened your eyes, take a second to like, share, and subscribe. Not just to support the channel and our TikTok and Facebook pages, but to stay ahead of shifts like this. And if you think this situation is intense, wait until you see how the next wave of inflation could quietly transfer wealth on a massive scale. That's where this leads next. Watch that video. Because understanding that might be the difference between reacting late and moving early.